I was a big soap opera fan in the late 70s, early 80s, and one of the soaps I watched, at least semi-regularly, was The Edge of Night. And one of the main characters, and certainly I think fans would say the most memorable character, was a character of Raven. And the actress we're going to bring on starred as Raven on the show for 7 years. She went on to also be on Another World and One Life to Live. And since then, she's been a yoga instructor, a registered nurse, a healer, and an author of this book. Of a few books, but this is the one that's best known. And sorry about my lights, but
there you go.
From the Raven to the Dove. And it's really cool. I haven't had a chance to fully absorb it yet, but what I've read, I've certainly enjoyed, and it can be very instructional for a lot of people. So, she is a Renaissance woman. And obviously this is different for us because we don't, normally we interview music-related guests, although, as I'll explain, she does have some relation to music that may be a lot that many of our fans may not know about. But anyway, I'm babbling here because I'm nervous. So, without further ado, would you please give a huge material issues welcome to Sharon Gabet?
Good evening, Sharon.
Hi, boys.
Hey, how are you?
Great to be here.
Oh, so nice to see you.
We love having
wow.
We love having a hot lady call us boys.
We do.
Get another fantasy fulfilled.
I have another birthday coming up too, so we can all celebrate together.
Excellent. Yeah,
January 13th.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Very good.
Excellent.
Very good. Well, you'll catch up to David and I sooner or later, but it's all right,
Yeah, right.
I love it.
I was saying that this is sort of a coming out party for me because, as a teenage boy or even a young man, there were two things you just didn't admit back in the day. One was being a Donny Osmond fan, and the other was that you watched soap operas, because none of my friends did. Or at least they didn't admit to it.
Yeah, right.
But I was a big watcher of mainly General Hospital, but also The Edge of Night, and it was a lot of fun. So it's just great having you on the show.
Thank you. Love in the Afternoon in the early '80s was big and we followed General Hospital for a long time, so we got to ride on their bandwagon, so to speak. But you're not alone, because my fan base is filled with quite a few young men who were teenagers when I was on, and they loved The Edge of Night because it was a murder mystery melodrama. It wasn't your normal soap fare. It was a little bit different.
Right,
and it kind of had a 50s film noir, dark, shadowy look to it. And it was very different. It wasn't just based on the normal stuff. So you're not so weird.
See, Dave?
So good to know
I keep telling you, David.
And different is good.
Different is good. Different is good.
Oh, God. Thank God for that.
Indeed.
Well, as far as daytime dramas are concerned, The Edge of Night, I think, is primarily what we know the name Sharon Gabet for, but you did go on to a few other soap operas. But Edge of Night, was that your first daytime job, so to speak? And what led into that? Where did your acting bug come from?
It was actually my first major professional job, and I was 26 years old when I got it. And I would never have guessed when I graduated high school at 18 that I would ever, in my wildest dreams, end up in New York City on a soap opera, like within 7 to 10 years. Wow. But I did go to nursing school at Purdue, and then got interested in acting and just started being in more and more shows and taking more and more acting classes. And pretty soon we're winning awards in our theater. And the next thing I know, I have a full fellowship to Cornell University for an MFA in acting.
Ivy League.
Ivy League, an Indiana girl gets that, goes to New York. And then after that, everybody just went right to the city. And this is 1976 when I entered the city. So the city was kind of bankrupt and run down, but cheap, which was great. And so many acting opportunities were going on there. So I got into the Actors Studio and worked with Lee Strasberg and Arthur Penn and Ilya Kazan right away. And then did a few plays and a couple of musicals and auditioned. And within a year, my first show was Raven on the Edge of Night. And
wow.
It was my favorite part for sure. To be able to have 7 years to play something, you really get to develop it. And also I had never done anything on TV before. So that was a bit of a shock because I had always just done stage. And that's a whole different thing to learn because you just get a few rehearsals and then to be on TV, on camera. They used to do it live. They stopped doing it live. The Edge of Night, I think, was one of the last ones to stop live.
Oh, okay.
But we shot it as if it were live because it was cheaper. If you got straight through it, they wouldn't have to edit, so the pressure.
That's one thing that I noticed in watching soap operas at the time. I mean, I didn't know the process too well, but I noticed that unlike in movies or in television in which there are a bunch of rehearsals, like let's say sitcoms, the actors would stumble over words every now and then. And I found that very endearing because it was more natural. In movies and TV, nobody says or
yes, that's right.
But on soap operas, you did, and
you have to learn how to save yourself.
Yeah,
you too. And we're just going. Thank God, all the tapes are on YouTube now, and for about the last 5 years, we have most of them. And we're going through and finding, flubs. And I just found one of me. I had a tagline and I was very serious, very angry at this woman for trying to steal my husband. And I said something like, I should have known sex was at the bottom of it. And they pulled on tape this music ending tag. It's called a music tag that I had never heard before. They surprised me with it. And it was something ridiculous like do 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 do. And I literally broke up on camera and they did not edit that out.
Wow.
So, I mean, just a fraction of a second, but I knew,
When you said somebody was trying to steal your husband, my first thought was, which husband?
Yeah,
you had several.
I had 8 of them on daytime.
Oh God,
in 12 years, I had 8.
More than Jaja and Liz. Wow.
And most of them did not fare well. They were murdered, killed, stabbed, drove off cliffs. I mean, it was not a good deal if you married Raven. You were going to be in trouble.
Yes, because like a song from the 70s that had Raven in its lines. You were a witchy woman.
Yes, she was. It was
yeah.
Do you think that? I mean, this may seem self-evident, but maybe it's not. Do you think it's easier to play somebody who's like you, or is it more difficult? Or in this case, would it be easier to play somebody who's unlike you rather than somebody who's like you?
Well, if you're an actress and you do your work, you can play anybody, and you can find any human emotion within you and bring that out. I will say that it's a lot more fun to play somebody bad because they're more complex and they're just more fun. They get to do more fun things, especially on daytime, because the heroines were just always the victims and always having things done to them, and they had to cry a lot. Whereas I got to wear beautiful gowns and have all these men and make everybody angry, and it's just a lot more fun. So, but I mean, was I anything like Raven? Who could possibly be that bad?
Right.
I was just a little Catholic girl. I mean.
Well, and then speaking of that, did you find any of the scenes that you had to do with all the husbands and men and whatnot, anything uncomfortable about it in front of cameras and cameramen and directors and everybody on stage?
It was the opposite.
Really?
Because, well, first of all, it's soap opera. I mean, you kiss and stuff, but they had more clothes on back then than they did later on. In the 80s they did. And just because you have all these cameramen and everybody out there and they're your friends, and we on the Edge of Night, this is the reason I love that show, we laughed all day long. Everybody laughed. We knew what we were doing, and it was just a great family and very relaxed. So you're in bed doing a bed scene, and the and the boom operator Butch would be during the break wheeling his microphone down to my bed to try to pull off my covers with his pull them down. I mean,
I love it.
Very, very comfortable and really a lot of fun.
That's cool. Well, here's a question, because we've interviewed a lot of artists, musical artists from the 60s. And they're basically like, well, we got together, we formed a band, and we made a demo tape, and we walked down to Main Street in London and into the offices of a major label and handed in the tape, and they were like, hey, this sounds great, let's make an album.
Which is something that could never be done now.
Which could never be done now. You couldn't even get on the street where the major label's office was located, let alone go in and hand somebody a tape to be listened to. In the late 70s, when you were coming out of Purdue and you got into your MFA and you got into New York City, and you said there was so much work to be had, was it something that you could basically walk into a lot of auditions and be fairly successful quickly because of the time period, or were you just that good?
It was a very special time because there was a system. The system now, unfortunately, seems to be you get on social media and get a whole bunch of followers, and then all of us, talent. I mean, yeah. But back then, they had a system, and the system was that you get the trade papers, show business or backstage, and in there they listed all the free shows, and there were tons of them. I heard you guys talking before we came on about the music scene back then in the late 70s and early 80s, where there are just all of these clubs that my ex-husband had a punk band, and he played CBGBs, and you
Wow.
could just so the same thing was with the theater, that there were all these little venues and little nooks and crannies here and there, and you could find out in what they were doing. You could go audition. You had to learn to get up at the crack of dawn and get in line and sign up, or you would, there would be 16,000 people and you wouldn't even get in. But so I did. I would get up really early, get in, get my name on, then go get some coffee, then go back. You audition. And if you're good, you're going to get stuff, because then you just keep going until you get things. So I did 3, 4, 5 showcases in order to, and then you get an agent. Then you try to get an agent to come see it, and then they sign you up, and then they send you out. There's this whole system. Yeah. So that was fortunate back then that we had that. Plus we had how many soaps in New York City itself shooting. So right. That was a way for people to make money. And the commercial industry was there. The commercial industry is still there, but almost everything, none of that exists these days. Right. So I don't know how they do it in New York. Plus, you can't afford to live in New York. My first apartment in New York was a 1-bedroom parlor apartment in a brownstone, a block from Central Park on the Upper West Side, for $300 a month.
Wow.
The times have changed.
Now they're going for 400.
Yeah. That's
a minute.
But you at least, there was a system that you could work through to work your way up. And if you were good, because of all the riffraff in the field, you were going to get a shot. You'd be able to get a shot. Yeah.
No, it's an interesting story as far as just how the times have changed. We see it interviewing the musicians, and it's so vastly, well, the music business today is vastly different, obviously, but it's probably the same way with the acting.
It is.
industry.
It is. It's a lot
Yeah.
more difficult. And
Yeah.
even the way the major films these days are, they're so big budgeted that they have to get A-list stars. And then, I mean, okay, what has changed is the streaming and everything. But
Mhm.
now all the A-list movie people are going to the streaming and the series. So it's just, it's just not as easy as it used to be.
Now, for all those, go ahead.
I mentioned earlier that I said that you're our first non-music related guest, but that's not entirely true because you did have some connection to music. You actually had a band for a while named Raven, didn't you?
I did. Actually, my connection to music goes back to my father. Well, my grandfather. My grandpa Gabet, they said he could play any instrument he picked up. He was just a genius musician. And then he had 9 boys and 2 girls. It was a big family, but 6 of those boys formed a band because music for their family called the Gabet Brothers. It's kind of a country band, and they played on the radio, and they sang songs like On Top of Old Smoky and Red River Valley in harmony, and and my dad played bass, fiddle, and guitar, and he eventually taught me to play guitar when I was a teenager, and so that started me on music. And then I also sang in the church choir and sang in all the musicals and began doing musical theater. So I started singing. And then when I got to New York, I did a couple musicals there, and I met the father of my children and my ex-husband, Larry Joshua, who had a blues band going, and he had a rock band going, and then he had a punk band called the Rubbers that played the Rubbers.
I won't even go there.
And then then I had a band called Raven, and actually the lead guitar player and producer of that band and another member of the band, oh my God, the band was so good. They ended up winning an Oscar for writing the song Time of My Life from Dirty Tampa.
Oh, wow.
There was some talent, and my backup singer won 2 Tonys on Broadway later on. I mean, there was a lot of talent in New York then. Not to say there isn't now, but I mean, it was everywhere. It was on the street corners. It was, like you were talking about, you could just go in clubs, all those great little clubs, and just see incredible people everywhere. I remember seeing the Go-Go's and Debbie Harry, and I saw the Clash when they came in, and the Sex Pistols, and all, New York was just so much fun back then and affordable. So then my kids also, my 2 older children, Jasmine and Max, are incredible musicians, and they both have had bands. So music, yes, runs
in the family.
It runs in. It's so important, and even in my healing and spiritual side, hey, it's all about vibration and frequency. And what's the best way to up your vibes? You put on some good music, So
spoken like Brian Wilson. Which was the impetus for good vibrations.
Good vibrations, absolutely, yeah. Music.
Now, speaking of that, or something related to that, how big a Beatles fan were you? Because I guess you were about the right age when they broke in the U.S.
Oh, they got me bad. Oh my gosh, yeah. Huge Beatles fan. I remember them on Ed Sullivan. I remember the movies that came out. I got my hair cut like a Beatle and would shake it in the theater, and just loved them. I was telling you earlier, I just saw Get Back, Peter Jackson's documentary, and just wept all the way through, especially that last concert. So they were very powerful influence.
Did you get to see them play?
I did not get to see them play, but I moved to the Bay Area for 12 years, and I've seen Paul McCartney 3 times. I saw him close Candlestick Park, and I've seen him in San Francisco, and I saw him in Sacramento, and I've seen Ringo twice. So I'll take that.
Yeah, pretty much a fan, I'd say.
I would take that.
Well, and we're talking about what you failed to mention was a couple of your tracks on some soap opera LPs. My Boyfriend's Back, huh?
Yeah.
And Jingle Bell Rock. I wish
Bell Rock.
Jingle Bell Rock on what was the LP called? And So This Is Christmas LP.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also I've been, I did a cabaret act in the late 80s in New York. And I just had so much fun doing that. And so I'm kind of working on putting another one together right now. And I'm also learning about technology and doing like 1 minute little film videos where I sing the music. I just did Witchy Woman for Halloween.
I just watched it today. Yeah.
And on YouTube, I have a whole superstar one where I do 5 or 6 different characters and put on wigs and dress up and stuff. And
I was playing it today, and I pointed to my daughter. I said, "This is who we're having on the show tonight," and she was just like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, that's her."
It's fun, I do love this technology stuff. Where with your iPhone and iMovie and Garage Tunes, I mean, you can just GarageBand. You can just do your own stuff and put it out, but just don't make a living out of it.
Yeah, right.
Well, it was funny because I could hear my boyfriend's back on that LP on YouTube, but Jingle Bell Rock's not out anywhere out there to find. I was like, oh gosh darn it, it's the holiday season. I was going to blast that in the background, but the only place you can find that is just still on vinyl on eBay or whatever, and it doesn't exist anywhere.
You're giving me an idea. I'm going to have to make a video of that.
Re-record it.
YouTube.
Re-record it, and then at the very end of the whole video, say thank you, David and Mark, and then we'll.
Yeah.
You still do stay in touch with a lot of your Edge co-stars, don't you?
I do. We were a family. We really were a family. And I lost track of them for a long time because everybody's life, of course, just, you start getting married and having kids, blah, blah. But then in 2015, I was coming out with my second book, and I had not been in touch with a few soap opera people. Well, Terry Davis and Frances Fisher, who are both just incredible actresses, have stayed best friends for over 40 years. But somebody got a hold of me and said, "Will you do a podcast on soaps? It would be fun to look back." And I did. And afterwards he said, "You should get on Facebook, because let me tell you, there are a lot of fans out there still." So I did. In 2015, I started a Facebook page just for the soap, Sharon Rose Gabet, and everybody showed up. And we started showing some of the old shows, and just laughing over those shows. And then all the cast was showing up, and really, really had a lot of fun. So now, because of social media, I've contacted a lot.
I saw the video of the interview with you and Frances and Terry. That was really
Locker
cool.
Room.
The locker room, yeah.
That was
I have to admit, although you were an obvious hottie, my crush was April, because she was a good girl.
You like the good girl.
Raven would have eaten me alive, and not in a good way either.
Your age, right?
Yeah. So I was.
Her.
Yeah, I loved April, and that
she was
smile
fantastic
she had.
and so beautiful on that show.
Yes, she is.
And still is. They're both incredibly beautiful women.
They are. Yeah.
I talked to Terry like 10 minutes before we started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we want to get together and do a spa thing for my birthday. I'm going to say it, we all turn 70 next year. Actually, Terry did.
No way.
Yeah. So we're going to get together and have a spa, couple of days at a spa, Frances, Terry, and I, for turning 70.
Well, enjoy the heck out of that. What the heck? I mean,
yeah. Oh,
wonderful.
I do.
And you talked about your children and an ex-husband and whatnot, and you're still single now. So I'm thinking maybe Friday night. Because David's married. I'm not. I'm a single guy.
I'm not married now.
No, you're married to a cat.
Oh, you heard that? Yeah, oh, she is very much a cat.
And I'm a fairy, so.
You're what? I'm sorry?
A fairy.
A fairy.
Explain that. Tell us what you mean by that.
Oh, well, there's a chapter in my book, From the Raven to the Dove. I mean, I am just the quintessential romantic idealist and always have been. I mean, I played Raven, but I am just this everything. I just look at the bright side of everything, and I just believe in, the goodness of everyone's heart and soul. And so I just really connect with, the Elven kingdom and fairy. I used to make fairy circles when I was little and call them in and then go the next day and sit in. I mean, I'm just way out there with that stuff.
You just remind me of something. When I was a little boy, I was watching Peter Pan, and there was this moment, I guess, where I forget which character asked, "Do you believe in fairies?" I didn't want to clap my hands, but my parents said, "Oh, you believe in fairies, don't you? You've got to clap your hands." And I finally gave in and did. I hadn't thought of that for like, I don't know, 55 years. Thank you.
Good. You were such a good, kind little boy. You wanted that fairy to live. Yeah.
Very much so.
That's nice.
Well, I do believe they exist. I mean, I believe in nature, elementals, and yeah.
And in your book, who is the goddess? Because you refer to the goddess several times.
Yes. Okay, so in my spiritual travels, the whole purpose is to get more conscious, to be more conscious of what you're doing. And so there's, you may think you're conscious, you know what you're doing, and you're well-grounded in physical reality, but mental consciousness is just one part of it. There's a whole nother part of the psyche, and that's called the unconscious. And I call that the goddess, because it's usually they term conscious masculine and the unconscious feminine. But the unconscious contains 90% of the information of our psyches. So I call the goddess sort of Jungian. Jung goes into that side, like exploring your psyche. And so the goddess, when I would explore the psyche and ask questions and meditate and ask for answers beyond my conscious mind, I would just call that energy the goddess that came up with the answers. So those quotes were quotes from my own unconscious as to the chapters that I was writing about or the questions.
Yeah. And you had quite an epiphany after you stopped doing soaps and you had moved out of New York to a house a little bit upstate, and you were looking back and you had everything, in quotes, yet you weren't, you felt like unhappy or unsatisfied, and then you had an epiphany. What was that about?
Well, we all have heard it said, money can't buy you love, money doesn't make you happy. And even though, okay, I've had money and I've not had money, and I definitely would prefer to have money. It's difficult not having money, and you work hard, and money is good, it's nice, but it doesn't make you happy. It'll get you material things. It doesn't make you happy. And my epiphany was that I had just had my third child. I was taking a break from working, and you work hard on soaps. They're long days, and you're learning 20, 30 pages a day, and then you have all the other stuff to do, and then all your other projects, and then if you have kids. And I was taking a break, and so getting off the merry-go-round, I know people in the music business as well. Part of the problem is if you can't get off the merry-go-round, you're going to self-destruct. And so I got off the merry-go-round, and I was in this beautiful big house on the Hudson River and just was able to let go. And I fell into a depression because all of a sudden, all that stuff wasn't taking my focus, and I was just settling into who am I? Who am I? I'm not Raven, and I'm not the Sharon I used to be, because I've evolved. So who am I? And that started me off with a delving. Yes. Yeah. See, I like Freud. Well, I got into psychology very heavily because then I started doing therapy, and yeah, I tried Freud, but there was too much talking with Freud. It was just too much mental stuff. So I got into Jung, and then I got into psychotherapy. And as an actress, that was really good for me, because I actually had I needed to express a lot of things that that had happened to me when I was younger, and experience I went through, and I didn't know how to do that. So I could do that as an actress on the stage through a character, but I didn't know how to do it as me. So that was really my journey then, was who am I, and what are all these feelings that are coming up now, and straightening that all out. And then in doing that, I learned a tremendous amount about the psyche and about psychology, and then that led me to spirituality and meditation, and actually it all also led me to science and quantum physics, because I'm the kind of person that wants to know, how do things work? Right. How do they work? I want to know the system. I have a scientific mind. My first major was nursing and science, so that got me into energy and quantum physics and how things work. And interestingly enough, my second book is on metaphysics.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Called Spiritual Magic. It's about the basics of metaphysics, and metaphysics now is backed up totally by quantum physics. So this book has a lot of quantum physics connections in it. And that stuff just fascinates me, how everything works. Who are we? How did this happen? And
I can tell.
I can relate to it, because
that's what keeps me going.
I have a degree. I have a master's in cognitive psychology, and I taught community college level psychology for 7 years.
That's
so
awesome.
I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
So the goddess is delving inside. That's really who she is. When you go inside and start looking at your psychological, where you're programmed, really, you find out that we're kind of programmed, and then you have to find out how you're programmed and whether you agree with that programming or not. And if you don't, then you can get rid of it.
How much do you believe in free will?
Well, that's really an existential question now, isn't it?
Exactly.
Good one.
I do believe in free will. I do believe in free will, that we create our lives to a certain extent with our choices and our beliefs, and what we think, what we surround ourselves with, and we react to those things all the time. But many of us aren't conscious of what that is. If you took a tape recorder and taped down your thoughts for the entire day and then listened to them at the end of the day, I think you'd be shocked at what went on through your mind, and we're just not conscious of most of that. Mm-hmm. So getting conscious is the first step. But then when you start expanding out into the spiritual realms, the question is, are we talking about the ego, personality, human side of us, or are we talking about our divine side? Mm-hmm. And if you're talking about the divine side, then the whole idea of free will, of the will of God, of divine will, what all those things mean come into play. So it's complex.
As a philosophy minor, one of the things we discussed was our free will and
You're married, huh?
I know. Yeah, that's what all the women say.
Yes.
Yeah, are free will and determinism compatible? I bet you didn't think you'd be talking about this today, did you?
Wonderful. I've never gotten these questions or this talk.
Material issues. That's what we're all about. It's all good.
No, I mean, I'm fascinated because you're so much more than just a soap opera star. You've done so many things, and the fact that the mind is so fascinating to you, I love it.
Yes, yeah. I think it's an eternal journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
I do believe in past lives for sure. You can't do this in one shot. Are you kidding me? And
no.
I mean, all that gets kind of wacky when everybody wants to be the Queen of Sheba and Cleopatra. When I've had many past life readings from really good people and found out more about when I was a peon. And
Yeah, it's like in the movie Bill Durham, Kevin Costner's character asks, "How come everybody in past lives is somebody famous?"
Yeah, I just watched
Why
that
aren't they just Joe Schmo?
Yep.
I'm sure we all were in one of our past lives.
Yeah.
I was a bathhouse assistant in ancient Rome. Yeah.
Now,
Now you need to write a book about that.
Yes, indeed. Now, Sharon, I got to ask you. You were nominated for 2 daytime Emmys. That's pretty big. You didn't get one, but I mean, you're in good company. Do you remember who got them over you in both those nominations?
I sure do, says Raven. No, I do. I do, and they are both just tops in their fields. And I particularly remember the first one because, they were both from The Edge of Night, which is a very small show. It was a little half-an-hour show, and this is the 80s now when soaps are really big and the hour shows are taking over. So just being nominated was just an incredible honor.
Sure.
But I do remember the first one, Robin Strasser from One Life to on that year. And I remember her getting up there and saying, they like to make you wait, because she had been in the business for like 15 years already and done she was on Another World, the first Rachel, and then Dorian on One Life, and just, one of the finest actors on daytime. And she had never gotten an Emmy yet. So, I'm like, okay. And then the second one was Erica Slezak, who, you want to know something?
No, yeah.
5 or 6 enough for you. Can't they just pass around the goodies a little bit? Also,
that's wonderful.
But yeah,
wonderful.
I mean, you get this question a lot, I'm sure, but how often, especially back when you were playing Raven, did people see you on the street and treat you as if you were that person?
They always did, and something, they still do.
Really?
And and that's okay. I love her, and it's all right. Even a lot of the people on my soap page still do, and I actually have a riot playing her to this day. I will post pictures of her. I will post, little things that she would say as if it were her, and it's fun to really continue her and still play her because she's just such a riot to do. But yes, I would be. Well, first of all, if I were dolled up, people would recognize me and oh my gosh, it's Raven. Why did you do that to Kevin? But I've always been very good at being able to be incognito, because if I don't put on the makeup and the lipstick and wear my hair in braids and a hat, and I hate makeup. I rarely wear it. So I could just walk by and you wouldn't even know that was me. I would just look like, the girl from Indiana. So I could actually, I wasn't attacked like some people were. And it was easy for me to slip around in New York incognito. So that was.
Well, I seem to recall one day in the rain seeing a woman wearing a T-shirt and underwear running.
You read that story? That is the best New York story. Oh my God. I'll tell it quick. This is in my book. So So I'm living in the Upper West Side, and I decided to go see a movie at the Plaza movie theater, and I lived maybe 10, 11 blocks away. So I go, and I'm wearing, though, this pure raw silk outfit that I had bought from the Edge of Night. I wore it on the Edge of Night, and I wore it there. So I get in, I see the movie, and when I get out, it's pouring down rain. And I did have my normal big New York City bag, and I'm like, I am not going to ruin this raw silk outfit. And luckily I had a t-shirt under it. So I took off, I crawled into a little doorway. I quickly took off my top and skirt and put it in my bag, and in my t-shirt and underwear ran home in the rain. And, you know, I thought, hey, this is New York City. What's the big deal? It's pouring down rain.
Totally.
No one will even notice. I was wrong. You know, cars were swerving, taxi cab drivers were screeching out there. There was this one guy that started running next to me and trying to talk to me. And luckily I was running like 20 miles a week, 20, 25 miles a week. So I was a really good runner. And I'm just like, put her into high gear and took off and left him in the dust. And when I got home, I just threw myself on the ground soaking wet, and I have never laughed so hard in my life. It was just so exhilarating. There's another funny story. I wanted to get away. I was on the Edge of Night. I wanted to get away weekend. So I went to Florida, just to some nice fancy hotel. And I was sitting, just wanted to read a book and sit there and just be alone. And you know, I wore a bikini, and guys kept coming up to me, and it was driving me crazy. So I took my book and just put it in front of me, and no one came. No one came. I thought, well, this is great. And then I realized that the book was something called like Intro to Physics. and like, who's going to come up and go, you know, hey, can I see your quarks? You know,
Yeah, men don't like smart women.
Your Higgs boson particle, baby. I mean, you know, so I thought that was hysterical.
Now, my wife's an aerospace engineer, so I love smart women.
Indeed.
Yeah, if I had seen that book, I probably would have sat next to you.
Now, I read somewhere, Sharon, that you had a passion for visiting archaeological sites with your daughter all over the world. Is there a favorite that you've had? Because that is also something that I had a passion with and tried to do with my dad as much as I could whenever he was able to do those kind of things. But memories that you could talk about, yeah?
It all started off in the early 80s when I'm living in New York, and I loved the American Museum of Natural History. My two kids were raised there. With their nanny would take them there, you know, a couple times a week. I just love that place. So they had the best trips, and I went on a 3-week Mediterranean cruise through all the major Greek and Roman temples with them. And they had the best lecturers from Trinity College in Dublin and all over, and an astronomer that would take you out on the deck and tell you what stars were up there, and just fantastic. And that started me off because there's something happened to me on those ancient sites, standing up there in the theater in Delphi, you know, or I mean, we just went everywhere. It was incredible. We went to Pompeii. So then I did a Egypt trip with them, and then I ended up going to Egypt 2 more times. And I've just been all over the place, but my favorite actually was the most recent in 2019. I'd always wanted to go, but I went to Peru and Bolivia.
Oh, wow.
A small group. And I got in just in time before the pandemic. It was November of 2019. And it was a small group, and we went everywhere. Started off in Cusco, and then went to not only Machu Picchu, but we climbed Huayna Picchu. So once you get up there, you can look down and actually see Machu Picchu underneath.
Oh, wow.
And we traveled with a shaman, and we then also went to Lake Titicaca and all along there. And there are some sites in Bolivia along Titicaca that are some of the oldest archaeological sites in the world. I
Right.
mean, I would also love to go to that place in Turkey, which is, I can't think of the name right now, but a lot of places in Turkey and in Sardinia, and I mean, always, constantly new places coming up. I find it fascinating, not just for the interest, I'm interested in human civilization, the rise and fall of human civilization. There are fantastic documentaries on YouTube on that whole thing, but also the energy of those ancient sites, because I read energy. I'm a clairsentient. So I can feel energy, and I'm used to working with energy, and every one of those sites are built on major vortex places, of course, and there's temples built on top of temples on top of temples. So the, just the energy of those places, including the Great Pyramid chamber, are phenomenal, and that's what I find interesting.
How is, on another matter, how is your daughter Johanna doing?
Thank you. My youngest daughter, Johanna, was born with autism. She's 31 years old now. She's essentially nonverbal. She has enough language just to get by day to day, but she doesn't talk. You can say, Johanna, get your pajamas on, brush your teeth, it's time for bed, and she'll know and do that, but she really doesn't have any expressive language. But she is just the sweetest, most incredible soul. I absolutely adore her. She lives with me right now and has lived with me. I've cared for her for the last 30 years, but I take her everywhere. She's seen more concerts than probably a lot of people, because she loves music. That's what she communicates with. She has an iPad that has like 2,000-3,000 songs on it, and she knows how to find exactly what she wants just from the way the letters are on the iPad. So right now I'm working on setting her up on her own. I'm getting older. I'm not going to be here forever. So I need, it's time to set her up more independently. And I'm working on that, getting a place close by, of course, and finding people to take care of her. Of course, I'll still be in her life, and we'll go everywhere. But she's a beautiful, beautiful soul, and I feel lucky to have had the experience of her presence in my life, as well as my other two children, who I just adore. I have the best kids.
God bless. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Tell us a bit about Larkin Malloy.
Oh, Larkin! Oh my gosh! So I went through my first 2 years on the Edge of Night, and Raven was just the worst. Everybody hated her. I mean, really bad. Really, 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 really bad. And then I took off for 5 months and went to dance classes, did some theater, traveled a little bit, and then came back to the show. And then was still pretty bad, but they began to work with me more and expand the character, and eventually brought on this guy, Larkin Malloy, he was only supposed to last a year. And he was the rich Skylar Whitney, but he had, the other Sky Whitney supposedly died in a plane crash, and he had his face done to look like Skylar Whitney so he could have all his money. And Raven fell madly in love with him because of all his money, but also because he was just dashing and handsome. And then she finds out he's fake, and then he had to try to kill her, blah, blah, blah. We just hit it off. What an incredible actor. And I've worked with a lot of incredible actors, but there is a thing called chemistry that just happens between two people, and no one can define it. It just happens. And Larkin and I had that we could just improvise. It was so easy to act with him and be with him. And so he ended up, they had to kill him off because he'd murdered a few people, but then they brought him back as the real Skylar Whitney, who really was.
Yeah, nobody truly dies until.
No, absolutely. You don't have to worry if they kill you off, even if they dismember you and throw you into the ocean. ISIS will find all your parts, put them back together, and you'll come back on a show sometime. They really want you back. Or you'll come as the evil twin.
Oh, Lord.
So
It's funny.
Arkin was just a treasure to have 4 years to be with and work with. And, we didn't see each other for a long time after. And we also connected when I started my Facebook page in 2015. So we had a couple of years where he was still in New York and I was in California, but we just FaceTimed and laughed and talked and reminisced and had the best time. And then unfortunately, in late 2016, he had a massive heart attack and passed away. So I was glad at least that we had those last 18 months to reconnect and just loved the show together. And all the fans got to talk with him on Facebook as well. And I just adore him and loved him and miss him terribly. But there's all these Edge alumni now that are in heaven, and it's like I can't wait. I mean, they must just be having a ball up there.
Yeah, it's well, I'm on the East Coast and David's out there on the West Coast, so next time I come visit him, the three of us need to get together for dinner, because I think the conversation would continue for a couple hours.
Fantastic! It's just so different than normally what I'm just retelling stories over and over again, which is fine. But this is great. That would be fun.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Especially your late 70s and early 80s being in New York City. What a time.
Oh my God. I was a student at NYU.
Yeah.
I was a student at NYU then, and just having the Village as your campus was just amazing. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah,
indeed. Well, that's great. Well, we so greatly appreciate you taking the time tonight, Sharon. This has been absolutely wonderful. It's been a complete change for us as far as where we go with material issues. I know David was extremely excited when he told me a number of weeks ago that this is who we're going to have on here, and I was like, "Are you seriously? That's fantastic! Really? I mean, I then I was like, wait a minute, I gotta readjust my thinking here, but it was wonderful, absolutely
fantastic,
wonderful.
Really.
Thank you so much. I
brought a Dr. Pepper to toast you because
I love Dr. Pepper.
But it was one of your prizes when you won a teenage
Miss
Fort
Teenage
Wayne,
Fort Wayne and Miss Teenage America was sponsored by Dr. Pepper, and part of the gifts were like 20 million tons of cases of Dr. Pepper. I thought I liked it.
Outstanding. Well, we wish you the very best, Sharon. The happiest of holidays.
Thank you. You too.
Just keep loving life and living in the moment. And that's what it's all about.
I just had one last question before we part. Is there one thing in your life that you haven't done that you hope to do? I don't necessarily mean a place to go, but just because you've done so many different things. Is there something you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
Oh, there's a bajillion.
Besides dinner with the two of us, yeah. But outside of that,
the three of us. Who else has been? Oh,
I have such a long list. This is partially why I'm setting Johanna up, because I want to travel. You know what? I haven't been to Paris. I have to go to Paris. My name is Gabet. There are Gabets in Paris.
Gabet, yeah.
There's a lot of things, but what do I really want to do? What would I like to do in this lifetime? Step into enlightenment.
Oh wow!
I have glimpses of it. But I can't sustain it 24/7. But if I could do that.
We wish you the best in that. I'm not even close.
Shoot high, people.
Yeah, I agree.
Aim for the top.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Well, wonderful. Happy holidays, my friend. Thank you again for taking the time. This has been fantastic. Episode number 30 of Material Issues, David, with Sharon Rose Gabet. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Or are you going to axe me? Do I need?
What's that? No. Well, we'll chop you off as soon as David says one parting thing here, because I know he wants to.
Okay.
Hopefully, we'll become good enough friends where I can call you Rosie, like you, like.
That is my name. I'm Rosie.
Like Terry and Francis did.
Yes.
So.
Beautiful.
Aw,
Stay beautiful, Sharon. Have a great holiday, and we hope to see you sometime on the West Coast. God bless.
absolutely.
Thank you. God bless you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.